since we're talking about gratitude. The question I had was, how do you live in gratitude? And then the follow-up to that is, what are the benefits of that kind of life versus the other way?
Well, I'll say for me, when we do, we're all in a discipleship practice and have been for the last 6 years. We do the same practice, all of us. And one of the early on practices is a couple of weeks we spend living in gratitude.
Yeah.
And that was the very first time we went through that. That was such a significant part of life for me that it is the part that I carry over all the time. I do it all the time. It's part of my morning ritual that I'm very conscious of saying out loud to God, to myself, things that I am thankful for, and it changes everything for me. I have a tendency in my head and my heart, and often too often, way too often, out loud, I am critical, and I have a tendency to be negative. And the truth is, I don't have any reason because my life is nothing but blessed. I'm surrounded by people that I love. I get to do work with people I care about. I get to do life with people that I care about. And I just need to be reminded of that. And it really does change everything. And for me, it's a reminder to me that when I say I've been invited to live in an unshakable kingdom, and God's kingdom is not... My Father in heaven has done nothing but pour good into my life, and everything I have is just a blessing. I haven't earned anything. Every time I have ever grabbed my bootstraps, I trip myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in practice and discipleship, and I've done that several times as well. And what it has always done for me is part of what we do in that is you spend a week or two just simply writing things down that you're grateful for, and you go beyond just the normal stuff.
Right.
You try to really be as specific as possible. And what I've found out about myself, and I'm pretty sure this is true for everyone, is when I find something to be critical of, like you mentioned, or ungrateful for, or just aggravated at, or whatever you want to say, it really does take over a huge chunk of my mental energy, my emotional well-being, and relationally, it takes over all of that. And it's interesting to me how those things, that list, if I were to make that list, is so much smaller.
Oh, yeah.
And when I spend the time in the list of grateful things, it puts that into better balance, I think. It doesn't allow those moments of frustration or ungratefulness to overshadow what I know that I do have. And I've found this true with my family. When you live together, you find plenty to complain about everything, about one another. And it's helped me to try and refocus us all in our home to say, I get that that's bad, and I get that I'm not happy about that either. I'm not grateful for that thing that happened or that situation, but man, look at what we have, guys.
Right.
Don't lose sight of the larger picture, and that practice has always been helpful for me to do that in my life.
Yeah, I think all the stuff you guys have said is true for me. I think the biggest learnings in my life over the past couple of years have been mindfulness techniques of not being passive in moments. Most of us are incredibly passive. I'm incredibly passive. We think we're not because our bodies are constantly moving, or our minds are moving to worry or to something like that. But and I know for some people this sounds insensitive, but it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. Anxiety by its nature is mindless. It's not mindful. Anxiety is, for many of us, a comfort, a strangely disturbing comfort. It's where our mind goes to when we don't know what else to do. When I'm sitting, it's why many of us don't like quiet, because whatever my mind runs to when I'm quiet is my coping mechanism. It's the thing I go to not have to deal with the quiet. The more comfortable I become with quiet and with slowness and with just taking things as they come to me and not as I want them to be, it's easier for me to live in gratitude. I find myself choosing to become aware of what in this moment, if this was the only moment I had left, and this is the only moment I ever even existed, what would I be grateful for in this moment? So becoming very mindful. There are things I try to do. As you guys said, the kind of gratitude exercises are important for me. Also, one thing that I've done, and I think I've talked about it here before, but I write letters pretty regularly because I realize, and it's honestly not, I believe it blesses the people that I write to, but it is mainly for me to remind myself that I am thankful for these people because for me, my nature is to want to produce and accomplish, and people become objects to manipulate to get my things accomplished. They become, well, I need this person to do this thing and this person, and people who don't really do much for me very quickly just get pushed to the side. They're not very effective for me. I don't have a lot of like fun relationships, and so having a moment to just express to the other person, but also express to myself. It's that way. I was thinking about the shoot that we're on. I'm very tired after being on this shoot. And I remember even just today standing there and thinking, oh, man, when's this thing going to be over? And I thought in my head, we don't do these shoots anymore. And I really do enjoy these shoots. I enjoy getting to go on these things. And I thought, I'm just gonna enjoy this moment. I'm going to take a moment right now, just where I'm standing. At that point, I was standing in the middle of chocolate cake mix, which you'll see at some point. But and I just thought this is great. I'm glad we get to do this. And so when you talk about all the stuff you guys have said, I just whatever fits your personality, because it'll be different for it. But I think mindfulness is the key to that of not just taking moments and seeing them as something to be rushed through to get to the next thing, or seeing them as a burden of some kind, and just seeing this moment's a gift.
Yeah. And kind of back to what Ed, you mentioned earlier, the other thing that I think changed about my gratefulness in my life recently is just the expression of it, because I look back and I realized that there were lots of times in life that I'd receive something from someone and it was almost a feeling of I'm kind of owed that.
Sure.
And when, or I was just expecting that. That's just, that's just what you do. And no, that it, for some reason you feel like, well, I don't need to be thankful for the things that are normal, that are expected. Those are the things that I should be thankful for the things that are over and above. But that's backwards.
It is.
And that's messed up thinking. And so I've tried my best to not just be thankful for the normal everyday things, but to express that gratitude. So, I thank my wife for the things that she does around the house that kind of have become taken for granted over the years.
Right.
And the truth is we have both become better at that. I've noticed that in the way that we react to one another, the way we speak to one another. We thank one another all the time for things. And after a while, you might think it would kind of get old or whatever, but it doesn't.
It really doesn't.
When I'm thanked for that, I go, wow, she noticed, and vice versa.
Yes.
And I've begun this practice. If I think it, I need to say it.
That's right.
There's so many times, and this comes out of I taught a marriage class around here a while back, and I encouraged the couples. I said, I guarantee you there are so many moments in your daily life where you think something positive about your spouse, but you just don't say it because you think, well, that doesn't matter, or
they know that.
Or they already know that. It would kind of sound redundant. It would kind of sound silly. I said, it is never redundant. It is never silly. If you think it, say it. And I've tried to build that practice into my life, and it never is overlooked.
Yeah, I've heard parents say, you can tell your kids you love them too much, and I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
How could that possibly be true?
But even
because you can't bless them enough.
And really. I think you need to be grateful to your children.
Yes.
I just remember a moment. I'm certainly not great at this, but a few weeks ago, I had this thought. My kid is so good. I've got a great kid. And I just stopped and I said, you know what? You're a really good kid, and I'm thankful that and it was attached to something that they did. And I just said, I'm really grateful that you're who you are. And they kind of looked at me funny because I don't think they were expecting that.
Sure.
But I don't think you can say that kind of stuff enough.
No, I don't either.
Mm-mm. No, yeah, and I think that's just key to the stuff you said of expressing it. And I think part of the reason we don't is there's a huge vulnerability that comes with expressing any kind of softer emotion, any kind of what I would just refer to them often as humble and gentle emotions, because gratitude puts me in a lower position. It puts me in a position of saying, you did something for me that I didn't earn and I didn't deserve. What I prefer to do is go, yeah, I know you did that for me, but I did this, this, and this, and this.
Sure.
I want to make sure they remember my tally
I actually
mark.
sort of earned that.
Yes, I didn't, anytime I say thank you, I'm saying, wow, you blessed me. You did. And as you talk about blessing, blessing does come from, it's somebody pouring something onto you. It's not you grabbing it. It's something someone gives you. It's a gift that is given. And so there is and I think that's why it often goes unsaid in marriages and in our relationships with our kids and those kind of things, because it's humbling. Yeah. And it's gentle, but we know the way of Jesus, the way of the cross is humbling and gentle. And if I don't ever feel any of and I don't mean fully on this term, but a little bit of humiliation in the eyes of what the world, if I don't ever have a moment where I go, well, I'm dad, I shouldn't really say, they should be thanking me. They should be coming to me and saying stuff, which they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
But it's interesting. You reminded me of something that I taught my kids a long time ago. And when we were out at restaurants, I've had people tell me, the wait staff that are waiting on you, you're paying them for this. So there's no reason to be grateful for that.
Oh, right.
And I'm all like, I tell my kids, everything your server does for you, you thank them before they leave the table.
Absolutely.
And I've built that into my rhythm of just when they come and they even just check on me, thank you so much. And then when we leave, many times I'll stop them and just say, thank you for serving me today.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're getting paid for this, you're blessing me in my life. And I've just tried to build that into my kids, and I hope that they carry that with them, because I think that's such an important skill to have, and it really is something you have to kind of work on.
Yeah,
You do, because I don't know why, but I'm certainly this way, and I think most people are. I notice negative things. I'm okay, particularly if I'm paying for something. I want to tell you when you get something wrong, but I don't feel the need to tell you when you got it right, because after all, I paid you for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And back to one other thing I think one of you guys touched on, the stuff that we've been learning over the past year about, like you were saying, Nathan, about anxiety and those kinds of thoughts and feelings. This gratitude practice that you live in is actually a preventative measure for a lot of those kind of things.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a really good mental health practice.
Yes.
Take out the God factor.
Yep.
I mean,
yes,
can't, but
People
Yes.
just, I think, forget that worry and anxiety is really nothing but negative imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can so people will say to me, I'm not very creative, but they're worriers. I go, you're exceptionally creative, because
Yes.
you're constantly having thoughts that have never happened, probably
predicting
won't.
the future.
Probably you're predicting the future.
Yeah.
You're creating stuff every moment. You could, on the other side, turn that imagination to a hopeful imagination, a grateful imagination, and imagine the impact you could have just by saying something, just by doing something.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's a part of taking every thought captive, I believe.
yes.
It really is a part of what Paul talks about. Of instead of just allowing my mind for me to do negative or for other people to do worry and anxiety, I decide to take control of the thoughts that I'm thinking.
It's so important that phrase or that verse you just referenced. It says, "Take every thought captive." We often miss the last part of that
Bring it into
verse.
obe-
Bring it into obedience.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have power over. I've said this before in messages. We are the only creature on earth that have the ability to think about our thoughts.
Yep.
Right.
We have power over our thinking.
I am not a victim to my feelings, and I am not a victim to my thoughts.
Exactly.
I have the ability to do something about both of those.
And I can't say that I've always lived in that, but when I fully grasped hold of that concept, it changed a lot for me.
Yep.